Looks like the industry is finally ready to face the real truth about what happened to Bryshere Gray. And I'm talking about someone like DeVon Franklin allegedly spilling on why Bryshere went crazy after Empire ended. Given that DeVon Franklin and Bryshere Gray worked together on Canal Street, a film specifically about the wrongful accusation of a young black man and the flaws in the justice system, and have possibly crossed paths a few times, it is likely that DeVon is at least aware of the systemic pressures Bryshere Gray faced. Baby, I don't know why it's taken this long for people to speak up, but let's just be glad that they are, because the things Bryshere has been through are honestly out of this world. Now, we know that DeVon Franklin has established himself as a prominent insider-outsider in Hollywood, and he is someone who has reached the highest levels of studio executive leadership, such as being a senior vice president at Columbia Pictures. At the same time, he has also maintained his identity as a preacher and man of faith, and because of this dual role, he has spoken extensively about the Hollywood culture, power dynamics, and the specific pressures faced by young talent. For instance, in his book, The Truth About Men, he uses a provocative metaphor, comparing men's lust and desire for power to an untrained dog, and he says that many men in Hollywood and elsewhere fail because they allow their inner dog to run wild, leading to infidelity, harassment, and even SA. Basically, he points out that Hollywood rewards people for their talent while ignoring their character, which creates a breeding ground for so many bad things, because powerful men feel their status gives them a right to mistreat others. Then, in the Hollywood Commandments, he also talks about the rules of the industry that aren't written down, and specifically warns young professionals that the industry can take their faith and change who they are if they aren't prepared. He actually emphasizes that any pursuit that requires unethical actions can lead to shame instead of success. In addition, DeVon has also talked numerous times about how the Hollywood machine is designed to make individuals feel godlike, which leads to the exploitation of those with less power. He has noted that once a person becomes successful, they are often surrounded by people who refuse to hold them accountable, and how this isolation allows bad behavior to go unchecked for decades. He often advises newcomers on how to read a room, and not just for business, but to identify toxic dynamics and pack leaders who may not have their best interests at heart. Also, during an appearance on The Real, he addressed the wave of SA allegations in Hollywood, saying that it is absolutely indefensible, and challenged men to stop using their success as an excuse for PDF behavior. Now, when it comes to Bryshere, he is literally a textbook example of what DeVon has been talking about, and when he joined the industry, Will Smith was one of the people who took Bryshere under his wing and supposedly mentored him. However, allegedly, Will Smith was doing more than just mentoring young Bryshere, and based on what has been said before, both Will and Jada were very busy with the young talents they were supposedly mentoring. First of all, here's what he said about Bryshere.
He's with my man Charlie Mack, so Charlie was with me every step of the way. First out the limo, so Charlie has been with me, 30 years coming up in the business. So, he's surrounded by a whole lot of strength. He's surrounded by a whole lot of love, and all he has to do is add discipline, and he's gonna be all right.
Funny that Will Smith mentioned Bryshere being under Charlie Mack, because according to Jaguar Wright, Charlie was actually the first one to act like an animal towards Bryshere. She was recently talking about how Will Smith was aware that young men in his care, including Bryshere Gray, August Alsina, and his own son Jaden Smith, were allegedly being taken to Diddy to be turned out. Then she also expressed disappointment in Terrence Howard, noting that while he speaks out on many topics, he remained silent about what was happening to Bryshere Gray on the set of Empire, and said that if he had integrity, he would have stood in the gap for Bryshere. Anyway, Jaguar alleged that Bryshere Gray was subjected to the most disgusting things by Will Smith and Diddy, and she even claimed that a tape exists documenting these events, and that Jaden Smith and Justin were present at the time. She also severely criticized Bryshere Gray's mother, Andrea, accusing her of selling out her son for fame and money, and she claimed Andrea knew about the alleged mistreatment by Will Smith and Charlie Mack, but ignored it to maintain a certain public image. She even alleged that Charlie Mack was allowed to tune that boy up on Coca-Cola, despite Gray having bipolar disorder and ADHD. Then she challenged Andrea's public narrative about being a struggling single mom, claiming Bryshere Gray was actually raised in a $1 million home by a man named Larry, and told Andrea to tell her son the real reason his biological father is in jail.
Everything that I could do to get Bryshere, to help her get Bryshere out of California into Chicago State to be ready for filming. She knew she knew what Will did to him. But because of Charlie, see? And Charlie had promised her all kinds of things. And all she had to do was pretend to be a broken down single mom who worked her way up through the ghetto and raised a superstar for television, when the truth is, she wasn't nothing but a drug dealer's whore. That's all she ever was. She went from drug dealer to drug dealer, and then she fucking snitched on whoever she needed to snitch on until she could get to the bigger bag, until she got with fucking Larry Lair, my friend who raised Bryshere in $1 million home. Your whole book is lies!
Honey, allegedly, Lee Daniels was also heavily involved in whatever was going on with Bryshere.
But Lee looked me in my eyes. He said, no coach. I'm gonna be his coach.
Did I?
I was like, yeah.
I was just determined you got that job.
Okay, Lee was the one who auditioned Bryshere, and he loved his audition and sent him to LA, where he auditioned with Taraji and Terrence. He actually loved Bryshere so much that he started mentoring him, and fans have always pointed out the weird interactions between him and Bryshere, like when he went to a Breakfast Club interview where he made some pretty uncomfortable remarks about Bryshere. First of all, Lee Daniels talked about spending too much time with Bryshere and his son not liking it. Then people said that the way he clapped his hands in a spanking motion while saying "Yaz, Yaz, Yaz" in reference to Bryshere was terribly unsettling.
Why are we talking about me? I gotta talk about Yaz too. Flip it over to Yaz. It's Yaz.
You don't get to talk to me too much, Lee.
Yaz. You don't talk to me too much? No.
Well, the assumption has always been that Bryshere still has trauma and PTSD from what he went through in Hollywood, and that's why he's always in trouble. For instance, in 2021, he pled guilty and was sentenced to spend 10 days in an Arizona county jail for DV against his wife. The wife was treated and released, but based on police reports, she had numerous visible injuries on her body and also stated that she was strangled at one point by Bryshere and temporarily lost consciousness. Well, in a police interrogation that leaked online, it became very clear that Bryshere had completely lost it, and he had major mental issues.
She always, that's what I said, she has like mental issues, like with girls texting me. We have an open relationship. A chick texts me on the phone, she might say, "Yes, I want to give you that B, I want to give you that." I might delete it and she still see it somehow.
Bryshere also said that another person named Mac was the one hurting his wife. Well, according to his wife, Bryshere had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and ADHD, but he refused to take his medication. And she also said that Mac is a fake name Bryshere uses when he does not want to be recognized when he orders food from hotels. Come to think of it, by the way, maybe when Bryshere went by Mac, it was because of the things Charlie Mack did to him, and that's probably why that name stuck with him even when he was out of it. Anywho, in a different incident in November 2022, Bryshere was arrested again for violating his probation. Cops were called by a woman, claiming that she was dating him, and she told the officer that his behavior was escalating, and she was concerned for her safety. The woman also claimed that Bryshere threw a box of food at her, pulled her hair, and she also told cops about other instances where he'd shout at her. And it wasn't just that, by the way, because the cops said that he had multiple run-ins with law enforcement, including a domestic-related disturbance call just the previous month. Bryshere apparently failed to inform his probation officer about those incidents, which is why he was hit with a probation violation, and a judge signed a warrant and he was arrested. There was also another lawsuit from Bryshere's landlords, who said that they rented him a condo inside their 4-unit Chicago complex back in August 2019, and they claimed that, among other things, Bryshere left his dog inside the condo for extended periods of time. They claimed the dog was left unattended in common areas in the complex and urinated and defecated all over the place, which significantly damaged the hardwood floors, stairs, and other parts of the property. In addition, they said Bryshere jumped in and out of windows, clogged the toilets by flushing down condoms, smoked pot in the place when smoking was not allowed under the lease, and engaged in unsanitary activity, including but not limited to eating breakfast and leaving leftovers in one of the bathrooms. And these are just some examples of his run-ins with law cause. Bryshere is always in some sort of trouble. See, what people are saying is that DeVon is someone who totally understands what happens in Hollywood. I mean, you don't climb the ladder to senior VP at a major studio like Columbia Pictures without seeing the dark rooms and the dirty deals. Baby, he's seen how the machine grinds up young talent, especially young black men who come in hungry and end up getting played by the power players. He knows exactly how the industry dangles dangles fame in front of you while asking for your soul, or worse, as a down payment. And when DeVon talks about the culture, he's talking as a man who's sat in those boardrooms where they decide who's useful and who's disposable. He knows the industry has a way of turning a blind eye as long as the checks are clearing, and he's definitely peeped the game enough to know that for someone like Bryshere, the Hollywood dream can turn into a straight-up nightmare behind closed doors. Basically, he's been the suit in the room, and he knows where the bodies are buried, period. Well, if word on the street is anything to go by, DeVon is finally ready to go into the specifics of exactly what he saw, including what happened to Bryshere Gray. And honestly, as someone who presents as a preacher, he should be the last person to stay silent. Also, for someone who always talks about how he wants to uplift and encourage and change the game, surely he cannot do this by failing to address the obvious. Unless, of course, he is no different from the rest and only cares about the profits. I'm personally looking forward to whatever he allegedly has to say. But meanwhile, let me know what you think of people like DeVon, who always acknowledge the filth in Hollywood but never go into specifics, in the comments section below.